From mumble rap allegations to making an album with Drake and featuring on a song with Nas, the career trajectory of 21 Savage has been really interesting to see thus far. Because of the recent transition 21 Savage has undertook with his new musical style, I'd argue that it has enabled him to become one of the most dominant figures in rap over the past few years, and that is down to the adaptability and flexibility 21 Savage is showcasing in his newer music. When I think back to that 2016 XXL freshman lineup, I never really thought that 21 Savage would end up being the biggest artist from that list. He wasn't really ever on my radar at the time, and I only really knew of him because of the iconic nature of his ad-libs. I definitely was one of those people that labeled him as a mumble rapper, as that was the word that everyone was associating with new and upcoming artists. But looking back now, I think it's a really unfair sentiment to mark Savage as a mumble rapper, as he is pretty articulate across all of his songs, even despite how monotone his voice is. I do think though that across his earlier music, a lot of his technical ability in terms of rap skills seem somewhat underdeveloped. His early music mostly consists of dark and gritty undertones, and I found most of his music to be relatively uncomplicated and not very complex, and thus being the reason I believe he gets associated with the mumble rapper tag. Harsh beats and a dark tone seem to be Savage's go-to when creating his projects, which in hindsight does make sense because he was trying to establish himself as an artist. But after a while, if you keep putting out the same thing over and over again, people will eventually get bored of it. And I think he kind of picked up on that. And so in 2017, he put out IZA album, which I consider to be his first major deviation in terms of his music. I recently re-listened to IZA before making this video, and while I'm not a huge fan of it personally, I can appreciate the fact that Savage was trying to produce something different than what he has created previously. I think though that I really started to notice the shift in 21 Savage's music back in 2018 off of the Metro Boomin project, Not All Heroes Wear Capes. I feel like his line delivery and also his wordplay and punchlines were heavily improved upon on this project. With his line delivery, it feels like he upped the intensity a lot, which makes the music a lot more engaging for the listener. And as well, in terms of his punchlines, they just seem to come across a lot wittier. Now with I Am Greater Than I Was, I feel like Savage further expanded on these skills and then some. He still had his standard dark and gritty songs, but Savage also created songs that had a lot deeper meaning and were really reflective in nature. Things like Betrayal, friendship, family, etc. were topics that Savage never really covered as deeply previously, or at least not to the same level of quality. Savage also further showcased his increased versatility, as he carries himself quite well not only on darker trap beats, but more upbeat instrumentals as well. Overall, it's a really good project, and from what I remember at the time, it was the project that really started to shift my mindset around 21 Savage as an artist. The most impressive thing about the album to me though is the song A Lot. Now, I know I might catch some heat for pointing out the most popular song off of the album, but the most impressive thing about the song to me is the fact that 21 Savage, even though J. Cole is featured on the song, doesn't really seem all that out of place. In fact, J. Cole seemed so impressed by the work that he did with 21 Savage that he even invited him to be on The Off Season, which is insanely impressive stuff considering the caliber of rapper that Cole is. Then we had the release of Savage Mode 2 in 2020, and to be completely honest with you guys, I don't really have that much to say about it because I honestly feel like it speaks for itself. I consider it to be Savage's best album to date, and I think he just takes all of the enhancements that he made off of previous projects and then just takes them a mile further. It's essentially like you're an athlete and you come third place in a tournament. You take some time away, you practice for about 5 years, gain some muscle tone, looking good, and then you go back to the tournament, you absolutely squash the competition, you get the girl, you get the movie style ending, the world's your oyster. He essentially went back to a previous style that he was synonymous with and showcased his level of improvement and maturity. And I think this album solidified Savage not only as a star rapper, but an overall hot commodity. The feature run he's been on recently has also been completely insane. It feels like anyone that can afford to pay for 21 Savage to be on their song pays for 21 Savage to be on their song, and every time he delivers a completely crazy verse. Even on Drake's past few albums, Savage has been a major saving grace. And because of this, Drake seemed to take it upon himself to get Savage to do a collab project with him. Her Loss is a great project, but it doesn't feel like a traditional collab album. It feels more like a Drake album that just features features a lot of 21 Savage, which is really unfortunate because the combination between these two seems really fluid and dynamic, but I imagine we'll probably see more of it due to the success the album has had. Whether you're a fan of his older music or not, there is no denying that 21 Savage has shown overall major signs of improvement as an artist over the past few years. The problem with most artists is that they aren't able to identify the weaknesses in their creations and therefore don't make the necessary improvements in order to stay relevant. The way in which Savage has adapted and improved upon his music in such a short window of time highlights his high level of musical intelligence. You can argue that maybe his lyrics still aren't that complex, but I maintain that he's still made major improvements in other areas that make any potential flaws much less apparent. I also think with the quality of music that he's been putting out recently, and also considering the fact that he hasn't released a solo project since 2020 and is still pulling in so many streams, definitely puts him up in that conversation of being one of the greatest artists of our generation. I believe if he continues to improve, he'll start getting put into the conversation between Drake, Kendrick, and Cole, but who really knows?